They didn't knock. They didn't leave a notice. They didn't even bother with that fake polite HOA routine where they tape a warning to your door and pretend they're doing you some kind of favor. No, what I heard instead was this brutal, violent crash, metal scraping against asphalt, something snapping and breaking in a way that makes your stomach sink before your brain can even figure out what happened. I was inside, still half asleep, coffee brewing in the kitchen when the sound hit, and somehow instantly I already knew what it was. I ran outside barefoot, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. And there it was, my mailbox, or what used to be my mailbox, lying on its side in the dirt like it had been deliberately targeted. The post was snapped clean in two, the house numbers bent and twisted, the red flag warped and crooked like a broken finger. And standing about 10 feet away, right beside a black SUV with dark-tinted windows, was this woman, late 40s maybe, tight beige blazer, heels that had no business being on gravel. Her phone was already raised, recording me before I even opened my mouth. She wasn't explaining anything. She wasn't trying to talk. She was yelling. "That mailbox is illegal," she snapped, loud and sharp, like she was reading out a sentence in court. HOA orders. It's been cited repeatedly. I remember blinking once, just once, trying to process how confident she sounded while standing on my land. I said, probably calmer than I felt, "This is my property." She laughed, not a nervous laugh, not an awkward one, a clean, dismissive laugh, like she had already decided exactly who I was and how little I mattered. She waved her hand at me like she was brushing smoke out of the air and said, "Don't start. You people always think the rules don't apply to you." That's when I noticed the SUV doors opening. Two men stepped out, slow and deliberate. They were wearing what looked like police-style uniforms, dark blue, neatly pressed, too neatly pressed. Their boots were spotless, not a single speck of dust on them, which was strange considering they had just driven over gravel and dirt to crush my mailbox. One of them actually smirked, like he was enjoying every second of this, and said, "Sir, I'm going to need you to lower your voice or we'll detain you." Detain me, on my own land. My kids were standing on the porch behind me. I could feel them there without turning around, frozen, silent, watching their dad get threatened over a mailbox. I felt my hands clench, jaw tightening, every instinct in my body screaming at me to push back. But I didn't. Something about them felt wrong. Not just the fact that I didn't recognize a real badge. Not just how close they stood, how aggressive they were. The uniforms themselves were off, too clean, too perfect, like costumes straight out of catalog. Not like something worn by people who actually work long shifts dealing with real problems. The woman, let's call her Dana, crossed her arms and said, quieter now, almost proud, "We'll keep running it over until you learn your place." That sentence stuck with me. Learn your place. I looked down at what was left of my mailbox, then back up at her face, and I thought, fine, go ahead, keep running it over, because the next one won't break. I didn't say it out loud. I just nodded once, turned around, and walked back inside with my kids, every step feeling heavier than the last. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the scene over and over. The smirk, the fake authority, the way they clearly enjoyed scaring my family. And right there, something shifted inside me, because this wasn't about rules anymore. It wasn't about mailboxes or HOA guidelines. This was about power, and someone thinking they could take it from me just because they felt entitled to it. So I got to work. The next morning, before the sun was fully up, I heard engines again. Slow, deliberate, the kind of slow that tells you they want you to see it happen. I stood just behind my front door, kids still asleep, heart steady this time, waiting. The same SUV rolled in. Same angle. Same smug energy. Tires lining up exactly where the mailbox used to be. One of the uniformed guys leaned out the window, laughing, actually laughing, and said, "Guess he didn't learn." The SUV lurched forward. But this time there was no crash, no crunch of metal, no wood snapping, no satisfying destruction for them. Instead, there was a sharp, violent bang, followed by a scream. The front end of the SUV dropped hard. Smoke hissed out from under the hood. Metal shrieked as the vehicle slammed to a dead stop. For a second, Just 1 second. Everything went silent. Then Dana ran forward, heels slipping the dirt, shouting, "What did you do?" I stepped outside calmly, hands visible, voice steady, and said, "I replaced my mailbox." That's when she saw it. Not metal, not wood, solid concrete, poured thick, reinforced, and sunk deep into ground like a challenge. Her face went pale. One of the men whispered, "This isn't good." Dana snapped back, panic creeping into her voice now. "Call it in. Tell them he booby-trapped HOA property." I smiled just a little, pulled out my phone, and said, "Already did." And I sent the footage too. She froze, because she didn't know yet. Every second they'd been there, every threat, every laugh, every careful tire alignment. It had all been recorded. She started pacing, heels clicking fast, shouting into her phone. Yes, vandalism, dangerous construction. Homeowner is aggressive. One of the fake cops tried to throw the SUV into reverse, but didn't go anywhere. The tire was shredded down to the threads, the rim bent and folded like paper. By that point, neighbors were stepping outside, phones already raised, whispering to each other, recording from every angle they could get. I leaned back against my fence and said nothing at all. And that's when a real patrol car rolled in, slow, quiet, lights off. Dana's face lit up with pure relief, and I remember thinking, she has absolutely no idea what's about to happen. All right, pause right here for a second, because this is usually the moment when people watching a story like this say, "Okay, but can an HOA actually do that?" And the answer is no, not even remotely. Under standard procedure, an HOA does not get to show up on someone's property and start destroying things, even if they believe a rule is being violated. At most, they issue written notices, fines, or maybe take civil action if things escalate. But using a vehicle to smash property, that's vandalism, plain and simple, HOA or not. Legally speaking, the second Dana and her hired goon stepped onto private property without permission, especially after being told to leave, they were trespassing. The moment they caused damage, it crossed straight into criminal territory. And those uniforms? That's where things get really serious. Impersonating law enforcement is a major offense because it relies on fear, authority, and confusion to control people without consent. Now, let's talk psychology for a moment, because this was never really about a mailbox. This was a psychological trap. Dana wasn't enforcing rules. She was enforcing dominance. People like her operate through intimidation, fake authority, loud confidence, and public humiliation, because most people freeze when confronted by something that looks official. The goal isn't cooperation through law. It's compliance through fear. And here's the part bullies never account for: documentation. Cameras don't argue. They don't panic. And they don't forget. The homeowner didn't escalate emotionally. He escalated strategically. That's why the power dynamic flipped so fast. Authority that isn't backed by law collapses the moment it's challenged with evidence. Now, with that in mind, let's jump back into the story, because this is exactly where everything starts falling apart for them. The patrol car rolled in like it was in a hurry. Lights still off, tires crunching slowly over gravel. That calm entrance alone shifted the entire atmosphere. Dana straightened up instantly, wiped her face, and smoothed her blazer like she was about to give a presentation, instead explained why a disabled SUV was smoking in someone else's driveway. She smiled when the officer stepped out. Relief washed over her face, so fast it was almost painful to watch, like she truly believed this was her reset button. "Officer, thank God you're here," she said, words spilling out fast now, pointing at me like I'd already been convicted. This man sabotaged HOA property, endangered lives, and he's been aggressive all morning. The officer didn't answer right away. He looked at the SUV first. The collapsed front end, twisted rim, shredded tire. Then at the concrete mailbox standing there like it had just want to fight it never started. Finally, he looked at me and asked one simple question. "Who called this in?" Dana rushed forward. "I did, obviously." The officer nodded slowly, raised one finger, and said, "Ma'am, I need everyone to stay exactly where they are." Then his eyes shifted to the two men in the fake uniforms. He frowned. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to show something wasn't lining up. You guys with the department? He asked. One of them nodded too fast. Yeah, auxiliary. The officers' eyes dropped to their belts, their boots, the absence of body cams, the mismatched patches. Then he said something that made my stomach unclench for the first time all morning. Take your hands off your belts. One of the men hesitated, just a second too long. That's when I spoke. Officer, I said, calm and clear, no anger left in my voice. They've run over my mailbox 3 times. I have video of all of it. Dana spun around so fast her heels scraped stone. What video? The officer looked at me. Video from where? I tapped the fence post beside me. From everywhere. He followed my finger, and I watched realization slowly crawl across his face as he started noticing them. Small black lenses tucked along the fence line, one near the gate, another hidden inside an old birdhouse by the driveway, angled perfectly. Dana let out a nervous laugh. That's illegal surveillance. The officer didn't smile. Let's take a look. I handed him my phone. The footage played clean and quiet. The SUV lining up the laughter, the first mailbox being crushed, the threats, the smirk when one of the men said, HOA rules beat the law out here. The officer's jaw tightened. He handed my phone to his partner just as another patrol car pulled in behind him. Lights flashing now. No subtlety left. Dana whispered, almost to herself, this isn't how this was supposed to go. I looked at the wrecked SUV and said quietly, you thought I was weak. One of the uniformed men tried to laugh it off. It's just a misunderstanding. But his voice shook. The second officer stepped forward. IDs. All of you. They hesitated. Just a beat. And that beat said everything. Dana jumped in front of them like a shield. They work for the HOA. We have authority here. The officer raised an eyebrow. On private land? I pulled a folded paper from my pocket, creased from being checked and rechecked the night before, and handed it over. Property survey. I said, this driveway, the mailbox, the road you crossed, all mine. Dana's mouth opened, then closed. The officer read slowly, deliberately, then looked up at her. So you order them onto land you don't own. She backed up, pointing at me now, voice rising, control slipping. He's lying. He's always been trouble. That's when the second officer spoke into his radio. Run the HOA company name. There was a pause, a little static. Then the reply crackled back through the speaker, and I watched the officer's expression change. Yeah, he said quietly. That company was shut down last year. Fraud. Silence followed. Heavy, crushing silence. And in that moment, you could see it register on her face. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This wasn't about rules or power plays or bullying people into compliance. This was criminal. Dana exploded, yelling loud and wild, accusing the officers of harassment, claiming she knew people downtown, promising they'd regret this. One of the fake cops tried to slip away toward the tree line, but the second patrol car blocked him in, doors swinging open fast. The officer turned to me. Sir, do you want to press charges? I looked at my kids, still on the porch, holding on to each other. Yes, I said, for everything. The officer nodded. Hands behind your backs. Dana screamed, you can't do this. I run this neighborhood. That's when another vehicle pulled up, unmarked, dark windows. A man stepped out, older, calm, badge hanging from his neck. Not flashy, not aggressive, just serious. He looked at me. You the homeowner? I nodded. Then he turned to Dana. Ma'am, we've been looking for you. Her face drained of color, because she still didn't know the last part. The man pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. Photos, reports, complaints, videos from other homeowners, other neighborhoods, other counties. You've been posing as an HOA officer across 3 counties, he said evenly. Dana shook her head fast. They deserved it. People like him don't follow rules. He looked at her and replied, calm and flat, the rule is simple. You don't get to steal power. The cuffs clicked shut. The neighbor stood silent now, watching everything. Someone whispered, she towed my car last year. Another said, she fined my mom. Dana cried and screamed that she was being set up. that this was all a misunderstanding. The officer read her rights anyway. As they led her away, she locked eyes with me and hissed, "This isn't over." I didn't raise my voice. I just said one line, slow and clear, "You picked the wrong house." The street went quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. After the cars left, after the lights disappeared down the road, after the adrenaline finally drained from my hands, I stood there longer than I needed to, just listening. Not the tense quiet from earlier, not the kind where you're waiting for something bad to happen again. This was different. This was earned quiet. My kids came down from the porch and walked over to the mailbox, still standing there like it had nothing to prove. One of them tapped it with their knuckle, looked up at me, and asked, "Dad, are they coming back?" I remember kneeling down, putting my hands on their shoulders, and answering with my whole chest, "No, not here." Neighbors started drifting over, one by one, slow, hesitant at first, apologizing for staying silent, for looking away, for being scared. And I didn't blame them, because fear works. It spreads. People like Dana depend on that. They count on everyone thinking someone else will speak up first. From a legal standpoint, what saved me wasn't strength or money or connections. It was clarity, knowing exactly where my property lines were, knowing that an HOA's authority ends precisely where the law says it does, knowing that rules only matter when they're enforceable, and enforceable only when they're legitimate. But let's be honest, this wasn't just about the law. This is a psychological trap that plays out in neighborhoods everywhere. Someone puts on a uniform, real or fake, raises their voice, throws around acronyms, and suddenly people forget they have rights. Intimidation works because it feels official. It feels final. And most people don't want conflict on their own doorstep. The lesson here isn't build a concrete mailbox. That's just a symbol. The real lesson is that documentation beats domination every single time. Cameras don't escalate. They expose. Calm doesn't mean weak. It means controlled. And bullies, especially the ones hiding behind clipboards, bylaws, or fake badges, collapse the moment their authority has to survive scrutiny. According to standard procedure, no HOA gets to enforce rules through fear, destruction, or impersonation. The moment they try, they stop being an annoyance and start being a liability to themselves. What stuck with me most wasn't Dana's anger or even her arrest. It was how many people whispered afterward, "She did this to me too." Towed cars, fines, threats, all unchallenged because everyone thought they were alone. And that's the part worth talking about. If you're dealing with an HOA or any authority figure that feels off, the answer isn't to explode. It's to slow down, ask for things in writing, verify credentials, learn your governing documents, and most importantly, talk to your neighbors. Silence is what lets abuse dress itself up as policy. I didn't fight that day because I wanted revenge. I fought because my kids were watching, and I didn't want them growing up believing power always wins, or that rules are whatever the loudest person says they are. Power doesn't come from intimidation. It comes from legitimacy. And legitimacy can't survive lies forever. So, if you got a story like this, if you've dealt with an HOA nightmare, a fake authority, or someone who tried to scare you into compliance, talk about it. Share it. Compare notes. Because the fastest way to dismantle fake power is to shine a light on it together. That mailbox is still there. No scratches. No dents. Just a reminder. I didn't fight for my freedom just to lose it to a bully with a fake badge. And neither should you.